Hey guys, welcome back to Quarantined Art. We are at day 12. I cannot believe it. I was looking at my calendar and next Monday is when our quarantine, we begin the next stretch of quarantine and just celebrating the victories that God's given us so far to already be into this journey, this amount of time. What a gift. Let me pray for us before we get started. God, thanks so much that you're greater than all the things that could make each of us anxious. Thank you that you are so patient with us in each of those places. And God, we just want to give this time to you as a symbol of our trust and as a symbol of our faith. Lord, I pray that you would just anoint and bless this time, that everything that we do and the words that I say would be a blessing unto you. Thank you, God, for where you have brought us, where you've brought us through, and where we are going. And we just want to tell you that we trust you. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining me. If you are watching this live and you're in Spain, the school week is over. So you get a weekend, which is just such a joy. Before we get started, let's do a quick check over the materials that we need, and we'll just get started. So you are going to need a pair of scissors, a little bit of tape, a paintbrush, some type of paint. I have that black paint that I used a couple days ago, and then I also have like a dark green acrylic paint. I thought I might switch it up and try a color today. You're gonna need a couple extra strings and just things that you might find around the house. Just a piece of paper, eventually, for where our art is going to go, and 2 pieces of cardboard. I cut up a box of crackers, so my cardboard's exciting. But just 2 squares. I cut these out just a couple minutes ago. You can trace like a coaster or another square object if you want to make sure your lines are square. If not, a little wiggle is all right. So let's get started. Today, we are working with almost fully recycled materials, which is such an opportunity because often as artists, we are aware of the materials that we use and how much we waste, and anything we can do to really eliminate that is something that we are always on board for. So let me show you a sample of the type of stamps that we're working towards during this session, and I think you'll find that they're remarkably simple. Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of cardboard and we're going to wrap some string and thread around the cardboard like this. I'm going to adhere it with tape on both the top and the bottom to be sure that these lines and strings aren't going anywhere. Next, I'll show you kind of how I'm going to make a couple. I've got some thicker strands, and then I've also got some thinner strands. I'll probably use these on one of my tiles and these on the other. So let's just get started here. Okay, so here we are. I've got my first triangle here. I'll set this right in front of us, and I'm going to flip it over so I can kind of see the design surface that I have to work with. I'm going to start with these wider strands or strings. They're kind of ribbons almost, mostly because I think they're really interesting and they have a really nice like weave texture to them. I don't know what these came on, maybe a gift or something. So I'm going to use these during our session. I'm going to grab my tape and I'm going to flip it over, and I'm just going to adhere one side to the very top, wherever you would like it to go on this first square. Little tape. Here we go. And again, make sure you have enough tape on there to really secure that. I'm going to kind of press into those sides so it looks like this. And then I'm going to take this strand and I'm going to wrap it around the side, and I am going to do the same thing. I'm going to cross it over in an interesting way. I think having a gentle curve to this line is really nice, sort of like an angular divide of the square that I have to work with. So I might just start with that. And what I'm gonna do is cut off my strand just about here so I can use this in just a minute. Do it like that. We'll flip it over. So whatever string you've got, you can make a pattern, a line that's similar to mine, or you could do something a little bit different. It's totally up to you. So far, here's what mine looks like. Great. Now, with this strand, obviously it's not going to go all the way across my tile, but I can use it on a corner, perhaps, if I wanted to kind of frame the space. So maybe I'll wait with this piece, I'll put this aside, and we'll wrap this piece next so that we know what kind of spaces this might work well in later. Okay, again, we're going to take this strand, take it to the side, grab a little tape, and start just a little bit of tape on the top here. Great. I think I might actually do them not too far apart, like that. So here's what I've got so far. Okay. And then next, I think I might let this one kind of warp along the side like this, and I'll turn it over on this side. Now, because these strands are almost puckering a little bit, I'm gonna make those two little bubbles of tape and gently slide those just underneath here in the middle to kind of keep these two, both the string and the cardboard, from warping too much. We just did this in one of my classes. So if you're one of my elementary or middle school students, you're like, oh, I've seen this one, Miss Shirley. Yes. So we did this just a little while ago, and what was awesome is that we got to find all of these amazing materials that had been either abandoned around the school or forgotten in some way, and we got to repurpose them, which was really, really fun. So again, I just did one bubble of tape down that center, and it's really changed the entire profile of how this looks. So that's going to be great. Again, I'm going to get a bubble ready for this next piece that I'm doing. I love this type of texture study because in a lot of ways it helps us see materials differently, which I think is super cool. But also, I'll show you what I'm doing here as we talk. I feel like in a lot of awesome ways you can use this, like on stationery, you can do it for pieces of art. You can use it for all sorts of stuff. If you have thinner string and you're like racing ahead of me, go team. You know how to adhere it on the back here, so you just keep taping around the perimeter to make sure all of those lines are fast. Great. Okay, I'm gonna continue to get this taped down. This one needed a little bit of extra attention. Imagine that. And then I'm gonna take it to the back, and I'm gonna tape it again. Okay, because I taped onto this border over here, I've got a little tape on the edge. I want to be sure to cut that off, so when we use paint later, we can be sure that it looks like how we want. Okay, so great. I've got two pieces securely adhered to my tile. I'm going to still use these last little pieces here now that I've got all of these pretty taped on. No, nothing's going anywhere. I'm going to use these last two pieces. Maybe I'll continue this line off the edge over on this corner, and maybe I'll let this one dip over here onto this side. That's my plan. If you want to do a similar pattern, it's totally up to you. If you have thinner strings, obviously it's going to look a little bit different than mine, but it still can look awesome. I think the key to having texture studies work well is that you divide up the space that you are allotting on your stamp in a way that kind of aligns to those golden ratios or the ratios of thirds. I find that when we divide up space like that, often we have a lot more success. Okay, so here we go. Tape this last little guy on there. Again, flipping it over and just being so sure. This one's really short, so it might be a little harder to get down here. Success. Beautiful. All right, grabbing a little bit more tape. Getting these stamps ready to go. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Okay, and again, I got some tape hanging off the edge, so just be sure to cut that off, or even just roll it on the back there. That's what I might do. Great, so we've got these three lines. Again, I'm gonna just grab this last piece, and maybe I'll actually flip it on this side and do it this way, on this corner. I think that looks nice. You tell me what you think. If you disagree, write it in the captions. Let me know, I can change it up. So far so good. We're gonna just keep taping these two on. I just got a couple pieces left. Okay. This one's fraying, so this is gonna be a challenge piece. I can feel it. Got him. Okay, great. So I have divided 4 strings across this first stamp that we're making. Thanks, Aunt Kim. Oh, encouragement, I love it. Thank you, thank you. So we're gonna grab this last piece, flip it around the back to kind of tell a little bit more of the story that we have with these lines, but nothing too crazy. And we'll continue. Okay, I don't actually like where this one's placed, so I'm gonna move it just a little bit. Okay, yeah, that's better. All right, and again, make sure you get all the ends of those strings securely fastened so that all of them have, there's nothing hanging off or moving on the front, because when we start to use paint, if these strands have a little bit more give, you're not gonna be thrilled. So make sure that they're held really fast. I've got a couple fraying on this side, so I'm gonna grab one more piece of tape and secure that. Otherwise, I feel like we're looking really good. Okay, awesome. I wooed them over. Sounds lovely. Great, so we've got this first one done. I can kind of sneak and see a little bit of the tape, but because the tape is a lot closer to the cardboard piece than we have, it's not gonna show up in our printing, so we'll be good to go. Okay, so I've got tile number 1. Now we're gonna move to tile number 2. If you're just joining us, grab some strings or some other things around your house, and we're just simply wrapping these and adhering these securely onto just cardboard pieces to use as stamps. All right, so I've got this one string here. I love this one because it's kind of like a coil. It reminds me of like Christmas. I'm gonna use this one, and I like doing the wrapping technique a lot more because you do a lot less taping. But I want to preserve as much of this texture that I have. So I'm going to take this piece and I'm just going to, again, start at this very top and stick it on there. Now we can decide where we want to go. My first thought was like, oh, all the way down there, why not? So let's try that. Give myself a little room to tape it on the back side, flip it around, just like that. Great. Okay, and I know I can't necessarily tape underneath this line, and it is raising up just a little bit, but as long as it's taut enough where it's off your tile, you should be okay. One of my tricks is to make sure my tape rides really closely to the very top here, or wherever side you have, so that way there's less room for it to wiggle. Cool. Okay, so I'm gonna grab another piece here. You know the drill. Okay, we're taping them down. And again, I'm gonna cross line like this, kind of like wrapping a present. I'm gonna cut this edge. And we'll let this wrap around, and again, making sure we're pretty tight. Cool. Okay, 2 for 2. This one's a lot faster. That last one was a real diva. Okay. Now, this one kind of has like a really interesting wiggle to it. Ooh, I want to see if I can use that. So I'm going to try to weave these 2 strings together. I'm gonna bring this one off the edge here, wrap it around the side, and wow, I want to see if I can use that. Let's see. I wonder if I can sneak a little baby piece of tape in. It might show up in our print, but I'm willing to give it a shot. Okay. Awesome. How's yours looking? Need any encouragement? I'm sure it looks great. Sure, it looks awesome. I think you really can't go wrong with these. No matter what, you learn something about the material you're working with, and or you know what to do differently next time. I think that's one of the big ones for me. I'm going to create a little baby bubble of tape here to adhere this design because I think it's just so cool looking. It's actually kind of working, which is miraculous. Okay, so basically what I just did is I made a really, really small bubble of tape, And I've cut just a baby slice of it off, almost looks like a chive. And I'm sticking it underneath where some of my lines naturally curve, like this. And we'll see if they show up during printing. They might, but they also might not. You never know. And then I'm just gonna wrap this cord around the side and tape it on the back. Okay, y'all, I'm really happy with where we are so far. Are we feeling ready to begin printing? Great. So again, to review, we've got these two tiles, very different things going on. We've got lines crisscrossing all over the place. But one of the great things is we get to kind of just test them out and see how they go. Be sure to clean up these last tape lines. If you have any tape hanging off the side, make sure either wrap it around or just cut it off if that's easier. Okay, now, quick printmaking lesson. Are you ready? I'm pulling the camera so you can see my face as we describe it. Okay, so in college I studied ceramics and printmaking. So this is my home and sweet spot. In ceramics, in printmaking, we use something called a brayer, and it's basically like a roller that you would use to paint your wall, except for it's completely flat, almost like a rolling pin. And we use that to create paint in a really, really smooth pattern, so that when we have that paint in one really, really thin layer, we can run that sort of rolling pin brayer through that paint and ink a surface really consistently. So I don't have that at home, and you probably don't either. So I'm gonna show you sort of a fake it till you make it method for stamping at home if you don't have a stamp pad or something like that, which I haven't had the chance to buy that here yet. So I'm gonna grab my piece of paper and I'll pull this camera down so you can see. Great. Let's start with the easier of the two. This one's more of a challenge. So I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to grab that scratch piece of paper that I had to grab before. And what we're basically going to do is put a little bit of paint in a line at the very top of our page, like that. Doesn't have to be a ton of paint. I probably, if I were to like put it in like measurements, I probably have like a half teaspoon of paint here. And I'm gonna take my paintbrush and I'm just gonna slowly kind of drag it down my page like this. Now, acrylic paint sometimes does dry quickly, so this is where this method might not be foolproof. But I'm gonna really work this paint into a square about the size of our tile. I think mine was like 3 1/4 inches or something. I'm stuck between the US system and the metric system, and it's been a very confusing couple months. Oh man, keeps me on my toes. Okay, so again, we're just creating a really, really consistent square here. I'm trying to keep lines all going the same direction and kind of working in rounds. So this looks really good. I think it's gonna match both the width and the height of the tile that I have. I'm gonna put my paintbrush down, and essentially I am just gonna stick this right in the paint. I'm gonna press down on each of the corners, and especially where I know that there are surfaces like where I know where the strands of string are, I'm gonna just stick down and give it a little bit of pressure. Now I'm gonna pull this up, and hopefully that has a little bit of paint on it. And basically what I'm gonna do is a series of test prints. So I'm gonna stick this down in the corner of my paper, press down really hard, and pull up. Now, okay, first inkings are always interesting because sometimes our materials need a moment to absorb the paint, and that kind of creates a pseudo layer for us to work with as artists. So here's my first test print, not the best. I've also got some other chatter going on up here where I press down too hard, and over here. So I know in my mind the next time I ink up, I want to be sure that I try to ignore and try not to press down on those places where there's ink. Again, we're going to go back to that ink pad that you created. You can give it sort of a paint down, just kind of make sure it's a consistent coat again. I recommend kind of going back and forth both ways. Okay, I'll drag it back this way, and we're gonna do the same thing. Put this same tile right back down, press down on each of those places. If we were in printmaking class, we would do this a lot more professionally, but you know what, we're at home, we're in quarantine, we can do whatever we want. So here we are. I get the feeling I'm gonna have to add more paint next time. It's drying up quickly. I've got a little bit more paint on here this time. I'm gonna do a second test print. Ooh, second test print here. I'm gonna put it down in the corner. Again, apply pressure. I'm going to try to avoid this danger spot that I had last time. Okay, we'll see. Mystery revealed. Okay, I had a really cool sound with that one. So pretty similar. This tells me a couple things looking at this print. I don't know how yours worked out, but you can learn from all of my mistakes. So this top, I guess this is bottom print, is the second one. Now you'll notice that up close, these lines down here are a lot darker. So we know that this paint is beginning to really work with the tile that we have and the materials in there. What I do need to do, I need to add a lot more paint. So let me show you kind of the at-home cheat sheet method for how to get your tile to create a really clean print. So grab out that paint again. And essentially what we're going to do is use that paint and we're going to apply it directly to the tile this time. So I'm going to add just like a little bit of paint here. Can you see? There we go. How much we have. I'm going to take this tile and I'm going to paint into the ribbons of fabric just like this. So take a moment, paint over the strands that you have. Try to avoid getting it on the very cardboard. That way you can kind of trust that as your background and you don't have to wipe it for any other. We call it chatter in printmaking when your printmaking plate starts to print. And you're like, no, you're not allowed. I don't want you to print like that. Okay, again, so I'm working this paint into these grooves. I'm gonna grab just a little bit more here. If it starts to dry, that's actually a great thing because that will become a surface that becomes a little bit more dependable for you. So I'm gonna grab just a little bit more paint. Although it'd be nice if we can get one print out of it, that would be really nice. So again, we're just gonna paint on top of this, working it into the grooves of whatever material you have. You could do this with fabric later if you are doing this with me and you're like, this is kind of fun. Yes, it is fun. Okay, cool. The last one I have to do is this very bottom one. Just gonna kind of wiggle some paint into all of those grooves. And I'm gonna take it right from here and I'm just gonna print it because I have a ton of paint on there. And the nice thing about that print is that this pressure that I'm about to apply is gonna actually help that paint solidify into that those strands of material that we're using. And the next time I do a print, it'll be even cleaner. Okay. Okay, let's see how I did. Okay, so this is the opposite. Here we go. We've got a lot of paint printed. We're starting to really see where these lines are going to be, and the importance of pressure is going to become very important. If you do have like a book, or I have like a pack of pencils I might grab and use that as a way to kind of apply more even pressure on top, that'll make a more consistent print. Okay, let's go back. Let's make one more of these before we do a final, and then we'll jump onto our other plate. So I'm going to go back, grab my paintbrush, get this station ready to go. I'm going to try to move a little bit quicker so that this paint doesn't dry too fast on me. It's not a very liquid acrylic. It's pretty dense. Okay. Shout out to my friend Karen who left these acrylic paints for me when she went back to the States. She might be watching this. You never know. Okay. So I got a lot of paint here. I'm going to jump and grab some ink real fast. Gonna get some ink on all of these sides, get some in the middle there. Cool. Pull this up. Woo! And we're gonna do our last test print up here. Again, I'm gonna grab that pack of pencils. It's a flat metal surface. So we'll do this. And that should let hopefully a little bit more evenness happen. Oh yeah, way better. Okay, cool. So this is one of the best prints we have so far, and I love every one of these for a different reason. I actually almost like the first or second one better, but let me show you the differences. So this is the last print that we just did. It's a happy in between. The reason we know it's a good or better print is that we can still see some of the detail. Sorry, mirrored vision here. Still see some of the detail, especially in these lines in the middle that we haven't really been able to see before on the ones over here. So as when we put on kind of a printmaking hat, one of the things we're looking for is detail without over inking. So this is a great in between. There are still some spots where there's maybe a little bit too much ink, especially on this bottom one here and on the top. But As you can see, I mean, there's so many really cool ways to appreciate all the different textures that we've found just in these sample test prints. So I wanted to give you guys kind of one application for how you could use these in real life. And I've got some paint on my hands. This might not be the best example, but I do, whenever I do a printmaking series, I always use the leftovers, or I use ones that didn't quite make it into the final cut. I use those for stationery and for cards. So I just have a piece of paper here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do my final print on the front of this card, and maybe I'll send this to someone when we're done. Let me show you that final print, and then we'll move on to the second time. Okay, again, we're gonna take our paintbrush, smooth over this inking station. I think I do still have enough paint here to work with, so I'm gonna see if I can fake it till I make it here. Great. Okay, you know what to do. Turn over your tile, get it in that pool of ink. Again, apply a lot of pressure. It would not hurt to grab that flat surface and have that stick down. Cool. Pull this up. Make sure it's got a lot of ink on there, but not enough where you're like, whoa. Pick which orientation you like on whatever surface you have. Center it, and then grab this, or whatever surface works best for you. I'm just kind of going back and forth a little bit, applying a little bit of pressure and friction, and then grabbing whatever clean finger you have left and pulling it up. Okay, so not as much ink as I maybe needed, but I actually love this one. So I have successfully captured the print of these 4 strands in this really kind of reminds me of those shells you use when you're planting, like those, what are they called? Pot liners almost. Some really, really cool textures and patterns. I'm gonna trim off the bottom of this card so it's a little bit more square at the end, but I think we've got a keeper here. Okay, on to the next one. We can put this inky mess aside. If you want to keep using it, you go for it, but I'm gonna start this next tile, and hopefully we'll get some cool results with that too. All right, so with that, let me just rearrange a couple things here. We've got this tile. I need to grab one more piece of paper because I went through it twice as fast as I expected. Grab this ink, work that into a line on the very top. Okay. While you get this kind of laid out, I'm gonna grab another piece of paper real fast. Okay. Lovely. So here we go. We've got our scratch piece of paper here. I've got my new tile. I'm gonna work this paint over the surface again. Okay. Now I want to be sure there are no like big paint ridges, especially because this is the first time we're doing the next tile, and we don't want any other paint to go anywhere else it doesn't need to go. So I'm going to pull this tile up. I'm going to put it down into that ink pod. I'm going to use my flat surface to kind of be my advocate. Press down, apply a little bit of pressure, and then I'm going to peel this up. I'm going to see that all of my surfaces have a little bit of green. I got a little extra on here. And then I'm going to do my first test print. This is a total mystery. This one could be a total bomb or it could be great. We never know. Printmaking is a lot about wonder, which most people would not expect, but kind of reframes the way I look at newspapers and all of that. Okay, pull it up. Okay, yeah, completely different story than what I expected, but I actually really enjoy it. So I even enjoy the chatter that's an accident over here. I've got these really, really cool beaded, almost beaded looking like lines that are swimming through my plate. And then I've got these little splashes of color over here. Now, if we really wanted to get rid of those, you could actually cut these pieces out of your tile completely. But I kind of like them, so I'm gonna keep it and re-ink it again to see if I can get a couple of these lines a little bit more clearly. So again, we're gonna go back, clear out the ink pad that you kind of created over here. I recommend just a couple layers back and forth. And then I'm, again, just gonna take this tile, press it into the ink, use that flat surface. Pull it up, see if I got more ink on there. I've definitely got a lot over here, so we'll see what happens. Okay, 2 for 2. Okay. Okay, great. Again, we're gonna peel this up, Oh, wonderful. Oh, yeah, cool. So I've got two a little bit different. This one definitely has a lot more ink on it. I'm able to see a couple more of these little beaded stories that we talked about with this top one. It almost looks like the ridges on the actual string of my makeshift stamp are kind of like beads on a necklace, which is really, really interesting. So I'm going to continue. I'm going to do a couple more, and then we'll do a final as well. I love this technique because you can literally use anything at home, and I think you'd find like they're the coolest patterns on, you know, the bottom of lids, or just so many things that I know for sure I just ignore. Wow, this is slipping out my fingers. I just ignore. I don't even think about it anymore. But there are some really, really cool patterns that we can use and appreciate. Okay, here we go. Okay. All right. Got a nice sound to it. So I've got 4 now. I had my students do a million test prints because I wanted them to see the differences between application of paint and pressure. This one is for sure the darkest print that we have. Again, I'm really just enjoying the way the paint is like dancing off of these lines. Kind of feels like I'm looking at through a microscope at something really special. Okay, I like to do at least 4 prints just to kind of get the lay of the land. Again, I'm just going to even out my ink pad. Give it one last testing go here. Okay, great. Peel this up and stick it down. Okay. Awesome. It's a good sound. It's super satisfying. So we've got 4 test prints. Again, we noticed some of the differences in the last one. This one is even darker than the first. And I had looks like a little bit of a smudge there, or maybe extra paint, who knows. But I think it's ready to do on the final. So with my not clean hands, I'm going to grab out one more piece of paper, and we'll do one like we would on the front of a card, or a lot of people frame prints in their home. So if you did one on the very center of a page, that can also be great. Let's try that. See how my centering abilities go from a distance. Okay, use that ink pad for the last time here, or last mandatory time, or at least the tests. Now we get to do the final. Flip this tile over into your ink. Grab that straight surface. Press in. Okay, we've definitely got some ink on here, so we're ready to go. I'm gonna just try to, if I was gonna be serious about this, I would definitely create some darts for where my tile should go in here. But because this is, I can frame it any way I want. I'm just gonna press down, an eyeball in the center of this paper here, and peel it up. Fabulous. Oh, you guys, we did great. Look at how cool these look. Awesome. Well, we have just rocked out through all of printmaking beauty and madness. Thank you so much for joining me. I got 1 or 2 things to read you before we go. I was reading today in a book from my dear friend Katie. She sent me this book on prayer. Just Amazoned it right to my house. God bless her. And I was reading it, and I just thought, this is such a cool way to think about prayer. So before I pray for you, I just want to read this to you. It talks about what prayer is in the role of a person, and then also like how that orients us towards God. So, and the author, sorry, I didn't give him credit, Philip Yancey. He says, prayer allows me to admit my failures, weaknesses, and limitations to one, capital One, who responds to human vulnerability with infinite mercy. To let God be God, of course, means climbing down from my own executive chair of control. I must uncreate the world I've so carefully fashioned to further my ends and advance my cause. And I just read that and I thought, oh my goodness, I have to share that today, because I think that is so true. That prayer is that type of surrender and posture towards the Lord, knowing that He is going to respond to you with mercy and kindness. What a gift. I'm going to close with a reading from Psalm 145. And I will extol you, my God and my King, and bless your name forever and ever. Every day I will bless you and praise your name forever and ever. Great is the Lord, greatly to be praised, and his greatness is unsearchable. One generation shall commend your works to another and shall declare your mighty acts. On the glorious splendor of your majesty and on your wondrous works I will meditate. I just know whenever we do a study of either textures of the world or plants or nature, whatever field of study kind of becomes the world that you thrive in. I know that God finds such beauty in the different things that he's made, and even this time today to kind of get to look at a microscope at how different textures weave their way into our lives. It's a cool opportunity to bless God's heart with our focus and our attention. So let me pray for you before we go. God, thanks so much that you knew everything that was going to happen before even one person walked into these situations that we're facing, God. And I pray that you would give us your vision and your eyes to walk in patience and understanding. Lord, thank you that you are in control. I pray that you would give me and you'd give everyone who is watching, Lord, the humility to submit to that and to give you that lordship over their life, especially in this time. Thank you for art. Thank you for creating, and thank you that it brings you joy when we do those things. Lord, we give this as our offering to you, as sacrifice of our time and our attention and the gifts that we have. And we just want to tell you that we love you. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a blast making stamps with you. I hope this gives you a ton of other ideas for how else to bring the world of printmaking into your own. Again, if you're just joining us, here's a little bit of what we did today. I might continue this last line afterwards. We'll see. And then also we can do this with stationery. We do it a ton of different ways. So what a blessing it was to do art with you. I hope if you are in Spain that you have a fabulous rest of your afternoon. And if you're in the States, a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.